There we go. Now we're ready. All right, James chapter 3. Yes. So, before we get into James chapter 3, we'll kind of reverse what, or review what happened in James chapter 1. And please follow along with me in case I say Jacob. That was the name of James. That was actually his name, Jacob. It was a common name. And I've been reading a different version, a different translation of the Bible, and it actually has it as Jacob and not James. So if I say Jacob, please know I'm meaning James also. So James spoke about trials and how we need to handle trials. In chapter 2, James was speaking about having faith, but not only having faith, but it had to have action. Amen. And in chapter 3, he kind of reviews a little bit of some points that he brought up in chapter 1 and chapter 2. Like in James chapter 1:19, it says, "So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath." There he was trying to remind people that there's a reason you have 2 ears. And so you can listen twice as much as you actually speak. All right. James 1:26 says, "If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, he deceives his own heart. This one's religion is useless." Here he was kind of just saying, look, you can boast about whatever you want to boast about. But if you can't tame your tongue, your religion is worthless. It's empty. It's just useless. There's nothing to it. If you can't bridle your tongue and stop yourself from saying something you're not supposed to say, you need to question your religion.
My mother always used to say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything.
That's right. It goes along with it. And then in James 2:12, it says, "So speak and do as those who will be judged by the law of liberty." In other words, every word spoken and every action made as a Christian will come up in judgment. So be careful what you say and what you do as a Christian. We have to keep ourselves accountable for what we say and what we do.
Amen.
Now, all these 3 verses that I read is kind of going back on what James said, and as he is reviewing these things and showing the power of speech and the use of tongue. And that's what James chapter 3 is about. It's about the use of the tongue. Now, as I mentioned the first night, James is actually called the Proverbs of the New Testament because they both speak on wisdom and about the power of the tongue. And the reason they correlate them, one example of the correlation is if you read Proverbs 18:21, it says this, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit." So, both James and Proverbs, or Proverbs first, then James, actually spoke on how powerful that tongue is. The tongue that's in our body is a powerful tool, and it can be used as a good tool or a bad tool. So, as we get into James chapter 3, James actually breaks chapter 3 into 2 different parts. One is the untamable tongue, as most Bibles put it, or the problem with ungodly words. And that's verses 1 through 12. As we go through those, we'll be looking at the problem of ungodly words. And then the second part is a prescription of godly wisdom. So we'll see the wrong ways of doing things, and then we'll see the correction factor, I guess you could say, the best way, right? So, James chapter 3, verse 1. I'll read this for us. My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment. Now, back in those days, when I say those days, I mean the Jewish times, usually your priests came, your teachers came from a bloodline. You know, the Levites always produced the priests. Well, as times went on and as Christians became something, Jewish Christians became something, a lot of people sought the title of being a teacher of the law, a teacher of the New Testament. And what James was saying, he said, look, don't desire the title of being a teacher or a rabbi. There is a heavier judgment on those who have that. It's one of those things, again, where, kind of like I said Sunday, we shouldn't be looking at it as a title. It's a spiritual gift. Well, with spiritual gifts, it becomes more of a responsibility on those spiritual gifts. When you have the spiritual gift, or you've been called to be a preacher, a teacher, an apostle, you have to realize that those people have influence. Well, when you have influence, it holds more responsibility. And as the Bible does tell us, to much is given, much is required.
Amen.
You know, what James was trying to say, and it goes for us too. There's too many people that they're like, oh, I'm going to become a preacher, and I'm going to go start this, I'm going to be a part of this big mega church, and I'm going to make $100,000, $200,000 a year, and I'm going to study this thing, and I'm going to write some words out, and it's going to be an encouragement to people. Well, there's a whole lot more to it. Ministry is a calling. It's not a spotlight.
It's also a sacrifice.
Now, I mean, a lot of people don't realize what preachers go through, on a day-to-day basis. One day you might be digging around in the mud and figure out it ain't mud once you get into it. And then one day you might, the good times are when you're standing up behind a pulpit preaching. That's the good times. There's things that go on underneath the skin, underneath everything that don't ever happen, that people don't see. And then I really think it's funny when people say, "Well, I'm gonna go become part of a mega church, one of those big churches, and I'm gonna be one of the preachers in a church up there," and they get in there, and then they get sent to go teach the 3-year-old Sunday school class. I'm a preacher. I'm ordained. I got a certificate. I went through 5 years of school, and I shouldn't be teaching a 3-year-old. Yeah, you should be teaching a 3-year-old's class. Because if you can teach a 3-year-old the Bible, you can teach anybody the Bible. And a lot of those people don't realize that there's 12 associate pastors in front of you already, and you just number 13, and you just got to wait your time, and they don't realize that. Or I really think it's funny when this happens a lot, and I've seen it happen a lot in our denomination, especially the younger pastors that are coming out of school, or they finish up high school and they go into the school of ministry, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to be put into a church, and I'm going to go run the church. They're 20, 25 years old, and I'm going to be a lead pastor. And they get called into a church that can't afford to have them full time, so they got to get a secular job, and they have no clue what to do. They have no clue how to be a bivocational pastor. I think it's hilarious because what they've done is they've gone out there and they've sought the spotlight, not the work that it's going to take to get to that spotlight. I always look at it like this. Not every church can afford a spotlight to put on the pastor. Sometimes all the lights have got to be on. You know, and it's just a thing. It's just a thing that was always instilled in me that, you know, and that was part of the reason I ran so long, because I didn't want to be. I knew what a pastor had to go through. I saw it firsthand. I saw a pastor who when he would try to fall asleep in a recliner, he got woke up 2 hours later by somebody calling. Or when he did have time off and was able to sleep, he had 10 kids in his house getting ready to wake up the next morning to go hunt. You know? Or when he did feel like he could start winding down a little bit, you know, something happened with family and he needed to handle a family situation in his own family. And then I saw people sitting there talking about him behind his back saying, well, he's never doing this, he never does this, he never visits here. Like, the man has a life other than the church. Y'all got to realize that. And that man had a sick wife, a very sick wife. But everybody, all they wanted to do was dog him and tell him how bad of a person he was, how bad of a pastor he was. But, you know, I saw this thing, and that's why I ran. I was like, I don't want that. I was like, God, don't call me. And he still called me, and he put me into situations I never thought I would ever be in. You know, so never ever did I think I would be in full-time ministry, let alone, you know, in a whole other state, like I've always said. So what James is saying is like, look, let the ministry be a calling, not a desired position that you're trying to go after. Okay? Look at James, look at verse 2. For we all stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle the whole body. Now what he's saying here is, there's no person on earth that's not stumbling or messing up. We all have something we're struggling with. Ain't none of us perfect. Ain't none of us figured out how to be perfect. Because as soon as you figure out how to be perfect, guess where you're at? You're in heaven.
Pastor Josh, where are you?
James 3:2.
Okay, thank you. From the wrong page.
Now the word perfect here, James is using it in the fact of it. Perfect means mature. Means mature or complete. Now, when you're mature or complete, there's a way of measuring your maturity. And here's how you do it. And this is how we can all know that none of us are perfect. Okay? It's measured by how well one can tame their tongue. Now, I don't know about y'all, but there was a couple of times today, just today, my tongue got unleashed on people who were driving crazy. I've been doing a lot of driving today, and especially this afternoon. Went from the other side of Battlefield to Virginia Beach, and then all the way down Virginia Beach Boulevard, and then turned around and got on 64 at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Oh, no. Tough.
Trying to make it home by 5 so I can cook some supper for my daughter. and my tongue was probably unleashed a little bit wrongly to some people. They were just trying to do the same thing I was doing. They were trying to get home and cook supper before something happened. But, you know, so what I'm saying is, look, I'm still maturing myself. I'm pretty sure if you ask Sister Nana, or even if you ask Brother Bill, they're still maturing. Because sometimes we say the wrong things. We mean one thing and the words come out a different way.
Amen.
You know, we speak in a different a different way of communication. Sometimes we speak with our heart instead of with our, we speak with our emotions instead of our heart. Hopefully our heart's in the right place, but our emotions might jumble it up sometimes. And adrenaline will make you say the wrong word sometimes. So what James is saying, like, look, don't desire after the ministry. Let that be a calling, because everybody is trying to correct themselves. Everybody's got a stumbling block. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. Back in Jewish times, a lot of it was, think about the Pharisees and Sadducees. They thought they were higher up on the totem pole, and so they talked down. And so a lot of people would go after that. And it's not, it's not a thing where we can say everybody is, oh, I am perfect, y'all are not. Y'all need to work on this. Y'all need to do this. You need to do this. You need to do this. No. If you hear me preach long enough, if you've heard me preach long enough, a lot of times I will say us. And when I do say you, I mean like God's pointed the finger at me, slapped me against the head, and I'm just repeating what He said to me. If I say you anytime when I'm preaching, trust me, I mean us, because I'm going through the same mess y'all are going through. I walked around the Greenbrier Mile today, and I had my hand in my pocket on my mask in case somebody just said something. I was like, just in case. I got it just in case. I'm going to walk around. I don't want to get in that conversation. I don't want to cause somebody to get ill and upset because I ain't walking around with a mask on. I just don't feel like I need to walk around with a mask on all the time. But if I see a store has a mask required, I'll put it on and walk on in because I need to get something out of that store. But, we're all trying to get through something, so don't ever feel like we're not. Don't ever feel like you're better than anybody else, because we all have a stumbling block. All right, let's look at verse 3 and verse 4. Indeed, we put bits in horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn their whole body. Look also, ships, although they are so large, are driven by fierce winds. They are turned by a very small rudder, whenever the pilot desires. Now, James here is using here examples to show that small pieces can control large things. He's trying to let us know, like, look, you might think your words are small, but they change lives in a big way. James used these two examples, one, because the Jewish Christians understood these two transportation formats. They used horses to get around and to pull things and stuff like that, and they used ships to go from one place to the other. But also, he used these analogies for the fact of what they represent. A horse, in its natural state, is wild. Just like we are as humans. In our natural state, we are wild. Just like Sister Nana said earlier, sometimes it ain't no fun behaving. We have a wild nature within us. We act around. I mean, if you don't believe me, go look at a 2-year-old and see what they do.
Throw a tantrum.
I mean, they act wild all day long. It's not until you give them something that they calm down. You know what I mean? It's just that thing. And just like a small little piece of metal controls a horse, we need to be controlled with with things, with something sometimes as small as our tongue, something that's not even 5 inches long half the time. And then a ship represents you in a circumstance. Because when you're in circumstances, what usually happens? The winds can blow you left or right. Somebody could say one thing and you're going to go this way. Somebody could say one other thing and you're going to go that way. We come up to during circumstances, during bad circumstances especially, it only takes one small thing being said and we'll go flying off the handle. And, the circumstances are caused by, as James said here, they're driven by fierce winds. And sometimes it doesn't even take a fierce wind to take a boat off course. I watched a video of a family that sails around the world. And they were sailing one night, and their teenage son was on watch. It was the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And it took him an hour to figure out that he had gone around in a circle. And their boat has autopilot, and it was supposed to be staying a course. Well, something happened and the autopilot got kicked off. And the winds shifted and took him in a 1-hour loop before he got back on the right heading. It doesn't take much for us to get off. It doesn't take much for us to start steering to the left in our Christian walk. It doesn't take much. It only takes one wrong word or one bad circumstance, one person getting mad at us. So James is reminding us in these 2 verses, small things can control big items. Small words spoken to us can change our lives forever. Small words we speak to people can change their lives forever. Look at verse 5. Even so, the tongue is a little member and boasts great things. Now, the tongue has no bones, but it can break bones. I always thought it was very funny when I was in elementary school and they come up there and say, your words, no, I'm rubber, you are glue, whatever you say bounces off me and goes to you.
And sticks and stones may break my bones.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. No! Words break bones. Words will break you down faster than anything. The tongue is so powerful that it can unleash the worst of the worst without you even knowing that you said it. There's been many a time where I've had to apologize for stuff I didn't realize I said. Or if I had a different intention in my mind and I said it a different way, and I had to re-talk around the whole thing to make sure everybody won't mad at it. It only takes one word to build up somebody or break down somebody. Excuse me, let me finish verse 5. I didn't finish it here. See how great a forest a little fire kindles. Now when he speaks that, you've got to realize, just like we said, it only takes one word to build up or break down somebody. Just think about it this way. It only takes one match to light a campfire. But it also only takes one match to start a wildfire. A half-put out cigarette can burn down a forest faster than anything. I've seen it. I've had the I don't want to call it a privilege. I've had the honor to fight a small forest fire, a fire that was being started by somebody flicking a cigarette out a window, and it lit up the ditch, and then the ditch went into the woods. One of my first fires, I rolled up on the truck with a career firefighter, He handed me the walkie-talkie and said, all right. He said, you tell me when this gets down to 3/4 out of water and you're in control of the radio. The chief's on the other side of the woods trying to communicate to me to tell the police officer to go down the road and start blocking traffic. Little old me, I ain't even got a fire coat on. I'm just standing on the other side of the fire truck, and I'm like, I can't tell this police officer what to do. That's his job. But I had career firefighters telling me, hey, look, go tell these people what to do. They need to do it, because if not, somebody's going to get hurt if we don't get this done. All it took was one little cigarette flicked out a window to cause a chaos on a major road. All it takes is one little lick of the tongue to break down churches, to split the kingdom.
Amen.
You know, it don't take much. It don't take much at all. Let's look at verse 6. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire by hell. James is just trying to look like it is. The world, the tongue is an evil thing. I mean, if it wasn't for the tongue, when the baby comes out of the womb, all you would hear, oh. The tongue helps them go, ah, and it's just vibrating. It's the thing. It's an evil thing that will keep you up at night.
That's funny.
I mean, let's just be truthful here. We can't pronounce words if our tongue is not done correctly. You know? I had cousins who had to go have surgery, and have their thing clipped underneath their tongue so they could actually form words. If it wasn't for the tongue, many words couldn't be spoken. The words, and the words I'm talking about are the ones we don't want to hear. We don't need to hear. You know? It was the tongue that turned some words into bad words. One of my favorite is spelled F-A-G-O-T. And this is a word that was used all the time when I was in high school. And my smart remark, as Miss Nana likes to say, I'm going to be smart with you real quick. My smart remark was, where's a bundle of sticks? I don't see no sticks. People use the word faggot to describe somebody when it's actually defined as a bundle of sticks. But it took the tongue to start putting a derogatory remark on those things. And at the end of verse 6 here, where we read that, and it is set on fire by hell, I want you to realize that the word hell here is being used as Gehenna. It's a place called Gehenna, which actually means the valley of Hinnom, Hinnon. Which in the times of which James is writing this, the valley of Hinnom was pretty much the city garbage dump. Now, the city garbage dump back then wasn't like the city garbage dump now. You know, they didn't care about the ozone layer back then. You know, they didn't decide to bulldoze dirt over all the trash. It was a place of where people would go throw their garbage, their trash, but it was burnt. So, him using the analogy of fire by hell is actually, it's a place of where something was burning And the Valley of Hinnom always had a fire burning because it was always burning the trash. It was always burning something. So he was trying to say, like, look, the tongue can set things on fire and never put them out, pretty much is what he was saying. So hell there was being used as a place, the Gehenna, meaning the Valley of Hinnom, where people would take trash and let it be burnt forever and ever and ever and ever. That fire in that valley was never put out. It was always burning. So that's where James was trying to get to there and let people know that, you know, the tongue will set a fire that'll never go out. Verses 7 and 8. For every kind of beast and bird or reptile and creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But no man can tame the tongue. It is unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Now when you read these two verses, there's only one way to take it, at face value. Alright? Mankind, by the words of his mouth, tamed all the creatures of the earth. Matter of fact, Adam named all the creatures by speaking them. He spoke and said, that is a deer. God took it as a deer. I mean, that's how things got started. Did God not speak the world into existence? He said, let there be light, and boom, the light came on. You know, he didn't have to use a clapper. You know, I mean, he used words. And even today, we train animals by words. You get the right kind of bird and you can tell it hello and it'll say hello, you know, right back to you. You get a dog, and what do you tell it? You say, sit. And it sits. Roll over, and it rolls over. We can tame things by the tongue, but yet us as mankind can't even tame our own tongue. Matter of fact, no man can tame it. It's only by the grace of God that brings it under to subjection. It's the reason that gossip comes so easy. You hear a juicy piece of information, I promise you, it only takes you about 5 minutes to tell somebody else. Or less. And my goodness, now with social media, it don't take long to get it out there to everybody. I mean, you let somebody that you know get arrested and see how fast it don't make it get on Facebook or Instagram or anything. I used to get phone calls from people saying, hey, did you see Facebook? So-and-so got arrested. I'm like, what? Yeah. It was put on WITN. I'm like, the news don't come on for another 3 hours. What were you looking for? Were you looking for the gossip?
Probably so.
I mean, I got a phone call one time from they were a helper in the kids ministry. And I got a phone call about a mom's boyfriend of a teenager. And she said, well, I just want to let you know this happened. And you might want to go check out this. And before I could even go on the website, it was on my Facebook Messenger about what happened. And I'm like, my goodness. There's a reason gossip comes so easy. The reason we can get it out there so fast and get it. You say something about the pastor on Sunday morning, I promise you to get back to the pastor before he leaves the building. I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to say it. Gossip gets out real fast. Lord have mercy. I come from Gossip Central. Little old Cheyenne, North Carolina. It was it was a Gossip Central. You did something in one church, the other church knew it before 12:05. And you best to believe on Monday morning when the country store opened up, all the men were, not the women, the men were at the store talking about it. The women would be waiting for the man to get back from the country store with their breakfast. Because they got out there at 5 o'clock and they'd be home by 7:30. But the men were out there gossiping about what happened Sunday. Gossip comes so easy because we can't tame our tongue. And we don't let God do it either. If we would start listening to God, He would keep our mouth shut faster than anything else. Listen to these prayers that were actually prayed. And if anybody understood the power of the tongue out of the Bible, I truly do believe it was David. Because the words of David got a man killed because he wanted his wife. Not only did he want his wife, he got his wife pregnant. And it was the power of his tongue that got the man killed. Listen to David as he, in Psalm 19:14, this is one of his prayers. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. And in Psalm 141:3, he said, set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. That guard is nothing but your teeth. Sometimes we need to close our teeth so the things that we want to say don't get to our lips.
Amen.
Sometimes if we would smile harder, we wouldn't say the wrong thing. If y'all ever see me smile and nod my head, because I try not to say nothing to y'all or say something that I shouldn't say at the time, because it ain't got time for me to say, sure, okay. If you ever see me do that, I'm going to go ahead and be honest with you. It's me keeping my mouth shut. Not saying nothing. You know, I think really, both of those prayers should be truly our prayers. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart, the thing that's in my heart, be acceptable to you.
Amen.
Let me stop saying the wrong thing. Let me start saying the right thing that you're going to count acceptable. You know, and then even to the point of saying, look, I know, Lord, I need something in between my lips and my tongue, because my lips help my tongue say certain words that I don't need to say. See, let my tongue just bite and be bitten down by the guard of my mouth. Sometimes it needs to be bit, I will say. Let's look at verses 9 through 12 here. As we're still looking at ungodly words and using our tongue in the wrong way. With it we bless our good. With it we bless our God and Father. And with it we curse men who have been made in the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessings and cursings. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring send forth a fresh water and a bitter water from the same opening? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives? Or a grapevine bear figs? Thus, no spring yields both salt water and fresh. Blessings and cursings come out of the same place.
That's right.
Our tongue can do both.
That's right.
Our tongue does both, I say. If you think about it, you know, in a lot of churches, even so in this one, not leaving ours out, we praise God, but by the time we get out the door, or sometimes before we even can get out of the door, we're cursing somebody who's made in the image of God. That's what it's saying. The similitude of God, it means the image of God. Therefore, if we're saying that, if we're cursing somebody that's made in the image of God, that means we are cursing God. Because they're made in the image of Him. I don't care if they are doing drugs. They're still made in the image of God. We don't need to be cursing them. We can't condemn them to hell. If we do, we're condemning God to hell. I mean, really, if you want to get down to the brass tacks of things, we got to stop using our tongues to be both praise items and cursing items. You know? Best way I think I could put it is Christians should act like Christians every day, not just on Sundays.
Amen.
And then as James starts talking about in verses 11 and 12 there, you know, it gets talking about opposites coming out of the same thing. And really, it all boils down to, you know, what is the root of the problem? What is the root of something? You know, a spring either has fresh water or bitter water, or fresh water or salt water. It don't have both. You go to a hot spring, you're not going to find a cold spot. You know, I mean, it just doesn't happen. You know, it's all depends on what's down there at the bottom. Is there something? Is the hot, like if it's a hot spring, it has something underneath the ground warming it up, warming the water up. You'll never find a cold spot. It'll never go cold because it's there to be a hot spring. You know, there's something that causes the geyser, the spring at Yosemite Park to blow off at certain times of the day. It's always going to be there. It's always going to happen. And if we have a problem within the church or problem within anything, we have to determine what the root is. What's the root of the problem? The roots of the problem have to be dug up. We can't just cut a branch off. So many times we have, you know, and I think this is what, I really truly believe this is what James is saying here. Like, look, we've got a tongue that speaks both things. It ought not to be that way. And if it is that way, what's the root problem? Where is it coming from? Why are you acting like that?
Amen.
Yeah. And we can't be the light in the darkness if darkness is living in our heart. We'll never be able to shine a light.
That's right.
That's the root problem. The root problem is there's something in our heart that's causing us to speak out wrongly. And even going into the verse 12, can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? If you plant an apple tree and you decide to tape on an orange or transplant an orange on it, guess what kind of tree that is? It's an apple tree. Why? Because the roots determine what kind of tree it is. What's in the root of it is an apple tree root. It's not going to be an orange tree. You can put all oranges on it for all I care, but it's still an apple tree. Because the root is going to produce what it's supposed to produce. And there's really a reason why we have to be made new as Christians. Why? Because we're born into sin, correct? We're born into being wild and saying the wrong things. We have to be made new because we have to change our root system.
That's why we're always telling our children no.
Yeah, I mean, we have to change our roots. He says what? He says, be planted by the rivers. We're supposed to be planted and getting the good nutrition because we need our roots to change and not be about evilness, about being evil, but being good. And why do we need to have our roots changed? Well, because the Bible tells us that we're going to be judged by the fruit we bear.
That's right.
Not the fruit that's transplanted on us. Just because I wear a shirt that says joy and happy doesn't mean I walk around with joy and happiness in my heart.
That's right.
I mean, I can wear a shirt all day long that says Jesus loves you. And yeah, He does love you. But the other part of the shirt should say, and so do I. You know? Some shirts that people make are very truthful. They tell us how they really feel about us.
Good feeling.
Sometimes it ain't good feelings, but that's the thing. You know, we want people to see a mask of ourselves. We want them to see, oh, I come in here on Sunday, I'm dressed really nice, and I'm happy to be here. And 3 seconds ago, before you walked in the door, you done cursed your son out, your kids out. You done cursed out the person who parked in your parking spot. You're mad because the person who was coming down the other direction wouldn't let you in the church parking lot. I mean, don't put a mask on when you come to church. Come in ticked off. Come in ticked off. Come in mad. I don't mind it. That's why I serve a God that'll turn your frown upside down. He'll do everything he needs to do to make your life better.
Yes.
And he'll put somebody in your way to make sure that everything changes before you walk in the door sometimes. So, realize that the tongue needs to be tamed. Okay, that's the first 12 verses there. The first part of what James chapter 3 is, like I said, broken down into the fact of there's a problem with ungodly words and a problem with the tongue, and we need to tame it. And in part 2, it's the prescription of godly wisdom. It's kind of like like I said, it's a correction factor. Verses 13 on down to 18, it's a correction factor for our tongue. Like, here's the reason why you need to get your tongue tamed. If it ain't because of everything else, of anything else, it's because of these. So look at verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. You know, James is here saying, listen up. Listen to what I'm saying. Because I'm going to tell you and I'm going to show you how to use your tongue correctly. You've got to use meekness or humility, meaning that you have power and control over that thing. Now, wisdom here is being best described as not changing your circumstance, but changing how you act in your circumstances. Your tongue can get you in trouble when something wrong is going on. What's that prayer? Lord, help me change. Help me not change my circumstance. How's it go? Help me change the things I can't. Help me be okay with not changing the things I can't change, or something like that.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
The wisdom is being able to act a different way in circumstances. In the mess that's going on, that's the wisdom we need to be able to change ourselves, not the other people around us. I have no power to change anybody.
Amen.
You have no power to change anybody.
That's right.
It's the same person that helps you tame your tongue, that will change them.
That's right.
You know? That's why it's called, you know, that's why, was it Casting Crowns, I think. It says in one of their songs, you're called to bring the people in and let him clean them. I can't change nobody. All I can do is invite them to come to church.
Amen.
All I can do is invite them to say a prayer with me that changes their lives. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. I can't physically shake them and make them a Christian. I can't physically shake a Christian and make them a better Christian.
Amen.
All I can do is what? Speak the godly words that are given.
Right.
to everybody. So that's what James is starting out here, saying, look, listen up, trying to get everybody's attention, let's go. You know, he can't be clapping at people and getting their attention. He's got to say some stern words sometimes. Remember, they're reading a letter that was probably written 6 months ago. You know, this thing has got to travel. These letters have to travel around until they get to a scribe, and the scribe says, well, the Lord has said, let's put the letter of James, our brother Jacob, into the Bible. And that's what happened. All right? Look at verse 14. But if you have bitter envy, or if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. The word envy means jealousy. So don't have bitter jealousy. And the self-seeking means self-ambition. Don't be selfish. It says if you have bitterness or jealousy, bitter jealousy and selfish thoughts in your hearts, don't boast and lie against the truth. Don't lie against the religion of Christianity, the relationship of Christianity. If you have those things, you need to check yourself before you wreck everything. Not just yourself, but what you call yourself. I mean, truly, you know, that's where Christianity has gotten a lot of bad rap from. Because certain people have become jealous over things, and they have gone out and boasted their selfish ambitions out in the world. Therefore, the whole religion of Christianity has gotten a bad rap. I mean, if you really think about it, think about all those television evangelists that everybody is still going after. Creflo Dollar, Joel Osteen, who's the other guy?
T.D. Jakes.
Not T.D. Jakes.
Jensen Franklin.
No, Jensen Franklin, they don't go after him as much. Who was the other guy? Kenneth
Copeland.
Kenneth Copeland. They've gone out there, and what have they gone and done? They've gone out there and bought planes and jets and put it all as a ministry right off. They wanted to be able to get to point A to point B faster and not have to ride on a public airplane. They put their selfish ambition out there, and it's put Christianity in a bad point.
I think they said which column done that too. What's that other name? Jesse Duplex?
Yeah,
I don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, when those things happen, I mean, let's be honest. Is jealousy and selfishness a trait of Jesus?
No.
What are we supposed to be doing? We're supposed to be making ourselves more like Jesus, right? So if we have those two things, we're not acting as Christ-like. We're not acting as Christians. We're acting as human beings. We're actually acting in an evil way, as you'll see in verse 15 and 16. Verse 15 says, the wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing are there. AKA, those two traits are demonic authored or satanic authored traits. They're not traits from above, they're traits from below. They're earthly. Who lives on the earth? Satan. They're more of a sensual thing, a thing you can sense, like touch, feel, smell. You know, that's what he's saying. If you're jealous and you're self-seeking, it's because you're seeking something you can touch. You're not seeking the one who created everything you can touch. And it's actually a reminder, what are the good gifts? Where do the good gifts come from? They come from above, right? And we're going to see in the next verse here, the things that we should seek aren't tangible at all. Look at verse 17. But the wisdom that is from above, aka godly wisdom, is first pure, then peaceable, then gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. So a good wisdom, a God-authored wisdom, a God-authored wisdom is pure, which means it's holy and clean. It's peaceable. It's learning and promoting peace. It's not promoting violence. That was something big that James was still combating. As we said in chapter 1 and chapter 2, he's fighting people who are willing to fight in the wrong way and murder innocent people. So he's still promoting peace here. And it's gentle. Wisdom is gentle. It means it's meek, it's modest, it's open-minded. It has an open mind. It even looks into the fact of, let me find the silver lining in the worst of circumstances. It's willing to yield. Means it's not stubborn. If we want to have a godly wisdom, we can't be stubborn in our ways. We got to be willing to listen to everything. Even if it's the stupidest thing in our mind, we still got to listen to it. It's full of mercy, which means it's forgiving to all, and it acts kind to all. It's made of good fruits, representing all the spiritual fruits that we talked about in Galatians 5:22, where it says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Are any of those things tangible? No. I can't touch joy. I can touch somebody who has joy. A godly wisdom is not sensual. It's not something that we can touch or pick up. It's not a video game where we can go over there and pick up money or pick up a health, a life, or pick up something. It's not that. Our wisdom that will allow us not to be, allow us to tame our tongue is not the things that we can pick up. It's the things that we can't touch, that God has put in our lives. The wisdom is without partiality. It means we treat everybody the same. There's no self-interest or worldly honor or fear of men. And here's the big one. It's not looking at the outside of man. A godly wisdom does not look at the outside of man. And I'll even go to this point. Godly wisdom in church is not the outside appearance of a church. It's the root of what's going on inside the church. The correct doctrine, the correct spoken word. And then also, a godly wisdom is without hypocrisy. It means that there's no mask there. They don't seek oneself's glory, they seek God's glory. It means being who you are, who you say you are, If you say you're a Christian, be a Christian. If you say you're a born-again Christian, be a born-again Christian. That's what you have to be. That's the godly wisdom that we're supposed to be using to tame our tongue. That's the godly wisdom that we're supposed to be using to live our lives. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things right there. That's how we live a truthful life, a life truthful to the religion in which we call ourselves, the relationship in which we bind ourselves with God. If we can't tame our tongue, if we can't say the right things at the right time, guess what? None of those things are in our heart. Point blank. It's just as we said. If you sin in one area, you sin in another. If you misspeak, it means you have evil in your heart and not God in your heart. Just kind of what it boils down to. James kept it clear and cut, like we said before. He lays it out. Don't forget, James is talking to Jewish Christians that have scattered around everywhere, been murdered, been persecuted, been told the scum of the earth. And so what do you think they did? They bucked up and said, all right, let's go. Let's fight. No. God said, let's have peace. Let's love one another. Just because somebody's confused don't mean they need to be killed. Just because somebody's confused don't mean they need to be condemned to hell. They might not know if they're a boy or a girl. But I can promise you, God knew what they were going to be before they come out of that womb. He knew they were going to be a boy or a girl. He didn't need to wait 18 weeks to wait for a picture to be shown. He knew before you even got in the womb. Just say it. Look at verse 18 as we close. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. True wisdom is a wisdom of peace. All those traits that we spoke of in verse 17 do nothing but promote peace. Having peace in the middle of a storm will definitely show the fruits that you bear. You might be in the biggest storm of your life, but if you still have joy in the middle of it, if you still have self-control in the middle of it, if you still have kindness in the middle of it, I think some of the biggest testimonies come from the people who say, well, I gave my last $5 to somebody who needed it worse than I did, and then I found $25. That's being kind in the middle of your storm. You have a storm where you ain't got no money. And yet, the fruit that you bear was the kindness, and people saw that. Peace should be made by every person that calls themselves a Christian. It should never be about how ugly I can be to somebody or how mad I can make somebody. People who debate the relationship of Christianity sometimes need to check themselves because they do it not to promote peace. I had a campus pastor who got in we were trying to evangelize, and he got in a debate with a college student who believed in Darwinism, and he come up there to debate the whole fact. What we were doing, we were giving out free Pepsis. We would say, hey, we'll give you a cup of Pepsi, and then we would evangelize to them. I even walked with students to the next class. I walked away from the table, walked to the next class, talking to students. Scared to death to do it, but I did it. But he got in a debate, and it was one of the very first times I've ever seen somebody get in a debate, and in the middle of the debate, they checked themselves. He had every answer that they would need. He had been to seminary. He had any answer that they had for Darwinism. And they were going back and forth for about 3.5 minutes. The guy had gone through 3 Pepsis, and and they were just going at it. He said, you know what? And this is what the campus pastor said. He said, you know what? I can see that I'm not going to be able to help you today, so I'll pray for you instead. He wasn't trying to create an argument that would be on the front page of the college newspaper the next day. He checked himself and said, you know what, let me promote peace here. you know what? You have a good day. Maybe we can talk another time. He promoted peace right in the middle of it. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen anybody do. They didn't give in to what Satan was trying to do and cause the tongue to say something wrong and create an enemy. He tried to create a friend. And here's the biggest thing I kind of get out of this verse here. As it says, now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. What we reap what we sow. God has sown righteousness and peace in our bodies. When we accept Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, He is planting righteousness and peace in our body. So if we call ourselves Christians and peace has come into us, what should radiate off of us? Peace. It shouldn't be a thing of, the world should not hear us say, well, I'm a Christian, and and then they get a sour taste in their mouth. I mean, let's be honest. We shouldn't walk up, we shouldn't have we shouldn't have the group of people who call themselves, call themselves LGBTQ squared, I don't know the whole acronym for them. All the people who say they don't fall in line with the way God says it. When we tell them we're Christians, they shouldn't automatically get a bad feeling in their body. That we're going to hound them, we're going to dog them. Do you know what they should feel? They should feel love and peace. They should be able to walk into a church and feel peace from the people inside of it. Because like we said at the beginning, who changes them? Not us. The words I say to tell them that they're going to go to hell if they don't change their ways, that ain't nothing but condemning them right there. They should be able to walk up into a church and feel just as much peace as we feel like we should. And the church should be a happy place, not a sad place, for anybody. It should bring good memories, not bad memories. So, with all that being said, James is trying to tell people, look, the tongue is a powerful, powerful thing. It's actually described as something more powerful than the deadliest snake out there. It has the venom of the deadliest snake. Hello? So maybe we should spend more time trying to tame it. Not gossiping a little bit more. And that's what James is trying to say in chapter 3 here. I hope you got something out of it. I hope we all can be challenged by letting God tame our tongue a little bit more, closing our mouth more than we. Let me use the guard of my heart. Guard of my mouth. Sometimes when we bite our tongues, it's because we need to bite our tongues. Before we say something stupid. Yeah. Amen. Amen. All right. You can mash the big red button there, Brandon. Thank you.